Hello everyone and welcome once again to The View from the Midwest. It's time for another St. Louis FC post-match edition. So let's get right into it as St. Louis FC was in the U.S. Open Cup taking on Minnesota United. And unfortunately the home team fell by the score of 2-0. It really probably wasn't 2-0. Obviously the final score is 2-0, but by the time the second goal had been scored, it was already pretty much decided, and St. Louis FC was trying to push numbers forward and just kind of got caught on a bit of a break. Overall, it's hard to know really what to feel about this game because St. Louis FC actually had the better of the play in the first half. They created a couple chances. It wasn't like they were dominating the match by any stretch of the imagination, but they probably had the edge in possession. They definitely had the edge in chances towards goal. I don't know that you would necessarily call them good scoring opportunities, but they were still pressing the attack and getting forward and being able to do a little bit with the ball. Again, the thing that I didn't like about what St. Louis FC seemed to be kind of trying to do all game long, and obviously a lot of this has to do with the way that Minnesota did set up defensively, but we've seen this a little bit throughout the year from St. Louis FC. They're trying that old English style, that old Premier League style, just pinging balls up. And I understand that you've got somebody in Herrera who's going to be able to settle those balls down and try to either distribute or create something for himself. But that's not really the way that is overly successful in the modern game today. You need to have some midfield possession. You need to be able to kind of work things through. And obviously, if the team that you're going against is going to be able to shut that down, then you do have to try to create long balls to try to open up space and get in behind the defense. I fully understand that, but this seemed to be more of the point of attack for St. Louis FC throughout the entire game. They would take the space in the midfield when given it, but overall, the trying to go over the top just seemed to be kind of the message from the very beginning, and I didn't necessarily think that was the way to go. But I don't necessarily know enough about Minnesota FC, Minnesota United FC to know how they play defensively throughout the year. Obviously, it ended up being kind of the right point of attack against them in this game. I do have to give Minnesota a lot of credit in this game, though, because whether or not it was intentional, the way the second half played out, I do honestly wonder if their goal in the first half was basically just let St. Louis FC kind of come at us with whatever they want, hold the line, keep things scoreless, maybe steal a goal, but keep things scoreless at the very least on the road and get it into halftime 0-0. And then once the second half started, St. Louis FC had it for a little bit, but there was just this, just sort of kind of like a calm motion to where it's just like creeping up a little bit further each time. Minnesota United finally was able to steal a goal about midway through the second half, and ultimately it just wasn't necessarily the greatest performance by St. Louis FC. While you do give Minnesota United a lot of credit for the game that they played, they didn't dominate. It's not like, oh, the NASL is a step far and above the USL or St. Louis FC specifically. It's not that at all. St. Louis FC was in that game the entire way. And if not for a giveaway along the back line, then we might be talking about another penalty kick game. Now, maybe St. Louis FC isn't the victor this time. Who knows how that situation plays out. But you would at least like to get yourself to a position where you could figure that out. And St. Louis FC didn't get to that because probably about after the first 15 minutes or so in the second half, the passing just went to pot. I don't understand what happened. I don't like calling people out in these videos simply because I tend to like most of the players on this team. I know that they're trying to put their all into these games, especially something as important as these Open Cup games. But, I mean, you got to call it like you see it. And James Musa didn't have a great game in terms of distributing the ball for whatever reason. I don't know if he wasn't seeing the opponents well or if he just didn't have the touch on this night. but he was leaving passes short. He was going too long with stuff. He just wasn't getting them where it needed to be. It's like he would play it too far in front when it needed to come to feet. He would play it to feet when it needed to go into space. And then the giveaway by Parker Marr, I'm not really sure what he was looking at. It was, I don't know if he saw a player there and didn't see the defender or what happened, but it ended up being just a horrendous giveaway, putting everybody on their heels trying to scramble to get back. But by then it was too late, and there was absolutely no shot for Mark Pace to save that at all. It was just a very bad giveaway, a very poor defensive showing overall by the entire unit. Now, you can't necessarily say that everybody played bad. I thought Dixon was okay. I thought Fink and Cochran as a duo were fairly solid. They didn't really get beat in the air towards anything. They were distributing the ball okay. I didn't think Musa had a very good game distributing the ball. Effort-wise, it was fine on everybody's part. There seemed to be kind of mixed signals with some of the attacking players, and sometimes they would just kind of stand around and let the ball carrier go where they wanted with it, when it's like, well, you're not providing them any options. I remember towards the end of the game with St. Louis FC already down 1-0, Fink goes up the right side. Well, number one, your center back is going up the wing to try to create some space. That is a problem in and of itself, but sometimes that happens. Well, all three attacking players were just kind of backing up. They have defenders on either side of them. All three of them did. And they're just kind of backing up, waiting for something to happen. You have to start cycling around and trying to create space and get into the open areas. You can't just hope that Sam Fink is going to be able to ping one perfectly on top of your head. That's just not how it works, especially when you're top of the box and he's trying to go outside. I mean, there's nothing you can do from 18 yards. It was just kind of a mess. I kind of think that St. Louis FC started looking forward just a tiny bit. None of the players will ever admit that. But, excuse me, I think, especially as fans, I know I was looking forward. I mean, I knew Minnesota was dangerous, but we beat them last year, and you start thinking, oh, how great is it going to be? How packed is the stadium going to be when we bring Kansas City in here? How many people are we going to be able to jam in this place? And it's going to be such an atmosphere. And then you don't even get there, because I think the players were looking forward just a little bit too much. I think once they had the goal scored against them, they started kind of yelling at each other and arguing, and although they created chances, although they pushed forward, you just never really got the sense that they were going to find that equalizing goal. I think if they were going to, it needed to happen on that great free kick, to where I believe it was Cochran that skied up, got his head on the ball, and the defender just managed to get just enough of it to get it off the crossbar and out of bounds. And after that, there was nothing really that troubled Minnesota United, and it was a disappointing result. One extra note, obviously the fans that showed up were great, but I understand that it's a midweek game and it's extra, it's not part of the season ticket package. But I was very disappointed with the fact that St. Louis couldn't get at least 3,000 people there. I mean, I honestly don't remember how many people showed up for the last Open Cup game against Minnesota last year. So maybe this was comparable, but it just didn't feel like it. And there was 2,000 and some change, so I don't think they even got half full. It was incredibly disappointing. Now, obviously, the fans that were there did their best to make as much noise as they could. I mean, even sitting on the east side, those fans were making a lot more noise than they do in the regular season games. The Luligans obviously were doing their thing. They were in full voice the whole game. But just as an overall atmosphere, I think it was missing just that little bit extra spice that a couple more few hundred people might have provided, at least, if not another 1,000 people. So that was disappointing as well. Disappointing night overall. St. Louis FC now has to switch their focus into the league. They're in prime position right now. I mean, we've still got a lot of time. It's not even really summer yet. We've just entered June. But obviously, with no more Open Cup games to focus on, they have to focus on the league and trying to make the playoffs. That's, I think, got to be a somewhat realistic goal for this season, given their place in the table at this time. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But again, 2-0 defeat to Minnesota United. We will not be seeing Sporting Kansas City this year. Incredibly disappointed, but those are the ways that things happen sometimes, and it's just the way it goes. Moving on into the regular season now. Got to keep the focus there. Comment, rate, and subscribe. Let me know what you felt about the game, how you think the team's going to perform going forward. And until the next time, I'll see you then.